Hello everyone, welcome to 27, and finally the work on my C4 is starting, so we're going to take it apart and the conversion to C2 is finally on its way. I've been talking about this for about 2 years, but for one thing and another, well more than that, probably 3 or 4 years, one thing and another, it's just carried on and on, but finally we're here. So today we started off by taking out the seats, the center console and everything around there, so that we have access then underneath when we have to replace the gear console, because the gear knob pivots on the prop shaft. So we've taken all that stuff out, it's almost good to go, and in a moment I'm going to show you the machined parts that we're going to use, the collars that are going to lock the two shafts together on the gearbox to enable the C4 gearbox to be used to convert the car to C2. Okay, so this is a gear shaft from the 964 gearbox. What you can't see is that internally there is another shaft which goes down to the bottom to the pinion, which goes to the rear diff. At the top there you can already see the machined collar in place, which locks them both together. So this is the shaft that comes out of the gearbox. That then mounts onto the center diff, which also transfers power to this shaft here, which goes to the rear wheels. This is why if you disconnect the prop shaft, a C4 will not move, because it will simply spin like that and it won't turn this shaft that goes back to the center diff. At the bottom of the gear shaft here, you can actually see the pinion that drives the rear diff, and that is spun by an inner shaft which pops out at the top, which I showed you earlier. Now the complicated thing is you can't just get a collar that locks both and that's the end of it. The center diff actually adjusts the backlash for the rear diff and for those gears. So the system that we've had to work out essentially means that you have to have a collar made in two pieces. This is the first piece, which slides onto the, there you go, slides onto the outer shaft like that. Then you have your nut, which you tighten up, and that's it. With that you adjust the backlash on those going to on the gears and the bearing at the front of the diff. Then you use this, which is what actually mates the two shafts and makes them go. So you've got that, then you've got your top nut, and there you go. So the reason why this has taken so long is that it's actually quite a bit more complicated, as you can see, than just what we thought initially, which was going to be just a straight old machined cap that would go on and link the two. You have to have them separately because of the gear backlash and so on. So that's where we are at the moment. So that to me is just a thing of beauty, and that will hopefully help convert it to a C2. So this is the part that we need on which the gear lever is going to pivot. There's going to be a shaft in there. Now the one that's in here is actually spot welded in, which is why we're having to clear up all this bit. So a load of hassle and messy. So we're now taking out the drive shafts, the rear drive shafts, which will be replaced by some thicker C2 items, which we will need to do anyway. So we might as well start working on those. We're having a few difficulties working out how to get out the prop shaft to get to all the bits without taking the engine out. Okay, so taking out the prop shaft is actually much more complicated than we thought, especially if you're not taking out the engine and gearbox, which is the way we're trying to do this, is without doing that. So we've actually disconnected all the bolts for the prop shaft. At the back there's actually a little cover, and you can go from the top to get the top bolts. Here at the front there's two bolts up there deep in the tunnel, and luckily Nick turned up just in time, and he made up a little series of extensions with what are they called, those bolts?
Allen key.
That's it. That's it. With a universal joint and an Allen key and a really long, thin extension, and he managed to just get in there and loosen those, which, because we had no idea how we were going to do that. We've tried sort of moving then the shaft forwards and backwards within the prop shaft tube here and the actual drive shaft that goes through it, but we haven't got enough clearance at the front and the back to pull it down. So what we're going to try and do now is to loosen this subframe here, see if we can get enough movement there to sort of pull it apart. Here, just in case. So anyway, we're having a tough time, and in the end we decided to disconnect the drive shaft, so we were moving this forwards and backwards, and all of a sudden the front gearbox, the front diff, it actually
I said it
came and fell straight out. So yeah, hit Roger's arm there. You can see my professional bandage. But the main thing is it's out, because it was really pissing us off. And now we should be able to get the torque tube out. And we've proved that you can take this and the prop shaft out without having to take the engine and gearbox out, in theory. And I can tell you it's heavy. I'm going to weigh all this stuff, but that's all weight that's no longer going to be in my lovely car. Oh, hold on.
Okay.
6 hours later, and here it is. Here is the prop shaft. It is very heavy, I can tell you, and to get it out in the end, we had to loosen completely the front subframe, take out the front anti-roll bar, loosen the rear gearbox, and all sorts of other stuff that I've forgotten to tell you about, but it was a right pain. But it is possible to get it out without getting either the engine out or any of the other ancillaries so far. Revel in the beauty of my C4 without the prop shaft and without that horrible front diff. It's going to get us so much nicer under there. Look at it. It's just beautiful. So this is the actuator, I think, for the center diff. So that had to be removed before we slid the whole lot out. And we're just tightening up the subframe again, because that all had to almost completely come off. Front anti-roll bar is off as well, because I've got a better one to put on, or a thicker one rather than better. And then for today, I think we're going to call it a day. Okay, so we made a lot of progress today. We've got quite a lot still to do, but at least we got these big bits of metal out, so that's great. I've shown you the collar, so please subscribe, make sure, and I will put on the next steps, hopefully in the next week or two. We'll make even more progress, and it'll be close to ready to go. See you soon, thanks for watching.